Good morning. I'm Sherman Stanford, and this is Making Sense of the Chaos. As usual, in order to make sense of the chaos, we have to keep in mind the fundamentals. These are not the only fundamentals that we could have listed, but I believe that these at least establish a sufficient framework, foundation, to make rudimentary sense of the things that are going on around us. First, God created the cosmos for His glory, not for man's. Second, the jewel of creation is mankind. Third, although in no sense the author of evil, God ordained Adam's fall. Fourth, in Adam the entire creation fell, including all of mankind and the entire physical creation as well. Now, how do we know that all of mankind fell in Adam? Well, of course, we have Romans 3:10, where Paul said, "There is none good, no, not one." Well, if there's none good, how did we go from man as good, which God pronounced in Genesis when He looked at His creation after He had completed it, and He said it was very good. Well, is man very good now? No. In fact, Romans 3:10, as I just said, says there's none good, no, not one. Well, what happened? Obviously, it was the fall. Fifth, as a result of the fall, God pronounced the curse of enmity between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. The seed of the serpent, of course, was Adam, includes the devil, includes all of fallen humanity, who will remain unrepentant in rebellion against God until the judgment day, until their deaths at any rate. And of course, the seed of the woman is Jesus Christ, prefigured here as the coming Messiah, which is the first indication of the gospel, the good news, although it's in seed form only, but we're told in Hebrews that Jesus is in fact the seed of the woman. And of course we know that all those in Him are the seed of the woman as well. And this is known as the great antithesis, and this is a major part of the lens, or the lenses through which we should see reality. Sixth, all subsequent human experience, all social experience, all of history is an outworking of this great antithesis. Seventh, the unregenerate, those in the seed of the serpent who remain enemies until their deaths, enemies of God, are without excuse. God has clearly revealed Himself in the creation and to them individually, but they suppress that truth in unrighteousness. They deny God in guilty self-deceit. Eighth, the word of the cross is foolishness. It's moronic, Paul tells us, to those who are perishing. It was that way to you when it was preached to you until your conversion. And that's how I saw it until my conversion. I think I've already said that one of my favorite pastimes before I was converted was to engage unbelievers in argument and make shreds of their faith, because I thought it was utterly foolish and insupportable. I was a nice guy, wasn't I? Still not a very nice guy, I gotta admit. Saved by grace alone. I can clearly see that God has done a great deal of work in me, but the amount of work that remains to be done is staggering, just absolutely staggering. I get very little comfort out of seeing what God's already done when I take a look at what remains to be done. Okay, we've been talking about God and government. Let's see if I can find my place here. Okay. Calvin has presented his case for government and the church to be in a symbiotic relationship, to be supportive of one another under God. That doesn't mean that the church ought to dominate the state, and it certainly doesn't mean the state ought to dominate the church. Each has its own sphere of activity, and each requires the other. The church requires the state to defend it against threats of harm, against evildoers, particularly against criminals. And the state, the civil government, requires the church to inform it of God's moral demands. And also, since the civil government is made up of human beings, it's the church that is the vehicle for the gospel to those members of the civil government. And it's a vehicle for mercy, for grace. So it's a symbiotic relationship between these two great institutions. Clearly, Calvin contemplated a situation in which, far from removing religious influence from government, civil government would exist in large part to aid the establishment of Christianity generally, although not in establishing specific denominations. In fact, he saw the civil polity as divided into three parts, all of which are answerable to God. These three are, quote, the magistrate who is the protector and guardian of the laws, second, the laws according to which he governs, and third, the people who are governed by the laws and obey the magistrate. I realize it's a little shocking to think in terms of the government being under God's authority, because we don't think that way. We think, oh, we have religious freedom in this country. That means that there's neutrality somehow, and everybody is free to believe whatever he wants to believe and to practice their religion whichever way they want. And, that has a spurious, superficial plausibility to it, but if you examine it in any detail at all, it quickly unravels. It falls apart in your hands. How? Why? Well, let's think about that for just a moment. Let's assume that we have absolute neutrality toward religion and an absolute wall of separation where the government has no input from religion, from God, and God cannot intrude on the government. What is that going to look like? Do you think that the ungodly seed of the serpent is going to be benign and benevolent toward the seed of the woman? Do you think they're going to say, well, they're just good Christians? Or do you think they hate us and they want to see us dead? What do you see in the world now? Do you see that the progressives are in favor of our practicing our religion? Multiculturalism, which says that every culture is equally right and equally valuable, as soon as it's faced with the culture of Christianity, it hastily beats a retreat and says, well, we believe that's true of every other culture, but certainly not of Christianity. We can't have you in the marketplace of ideas. We can't have you in the cultural milieu, the cultural mix. Oh, no, because you make exclusive truth claims, exclusive claims of Jesus being the only vehicle through which one can be saved. No, you're not allowed out there. Do you understand that? Okay, there is no neutrality. Get that in your head. There is no neutrality. There's no place in the world where anyone can stand and say, this is a neutral place. Some of you may have heard of a fellow by the name of René Descartes. He was looking for a neutral place in the world to find truth from which he could erect a belief system or a coherent system of truth to account for the reality he found in the world. But he wanted to find a neutral place so that he could appeal to the seed of the serpent from a point of neutrality, not from situated within the seed of the woman, not from God's perspective, because he knew that would alienate them. So he came up with what he called cogito ergo sum, which is Latin, and it means I think, therefore I am. Well, what's the significance of that regarding this? Well, first of all, he didn't find an independent point of reality from which he could launch or build an entire system of reality to appeal to the unbelievers. Because you see, even in his great formulation, looking for his Pousto, his rock upon which to found his reality, he committed a logical fallacy, okay? He says, if P then Q, if I think, therefore I must be. Well, what's the logical fallacy? Well, if he was trying to prove that he exists, then don't you notice that in his very first premise, I think, therefore I am? What's the first word in his very first premise? It's I. Well, it assumes the existence of the fact he intends to prove, right? This is called begging the question. It is a logical fallacy. You're not allowed to do that. Now, he was a brilliant man, okay? My little pea brain couldn't even stand next to his huge boulder of a brain. I have no doubt of that. So how did he miss that? Because sin blinds. And in his, I'm not saying that he was self-consciously denying God. I'm not saying that the man was a Christian. I believe that. But in his desire to appeal to the seed of the serpent with an alternate reality not based on God, he was being unfaithful to God. And unfaithfulness to God is sin. Well, in the same way that he could not find a Pousto outside of God, no one can. Okay? Albert Camus, an existentialist from the last century, in 1960, I think, probably killed himself. We're not certain of that. He ran his car into a bridge abutment, which could have been an accident, but almost certainly was not, because the logical culmination of existentialism is suicide. His Sartre, the major figure in existentialism, said that if you could find a Pousto, if you could find a point of reality in the universe apart from God, then he could safely build a thought system without having to bow the knee to God. But he died in despair because he could find no such point. There is no such point. These great thinkers could find no such point. Do you think you and I will? God says there is no such point. He says he is the source of all truth. There is no source of truth apart from God. Jesus says all authority in heaven and on earth is mine. All authority. There is no other. There's no source of authority. There's no source of truth apart from Jesus. It is a radical religion. Do you understand that? It's not just sprinkling water on top of us and baptizing us in the name of Jesus, and somehow that's going to make butter no longer melt in our mouths. We will be so cool and so good. That. All those superficialities, that has nothing to do with true religion. True religion, not that I'm decrying baptism, that's not the point. But the point is that religion is a fundamental orientation either toward God or away from God. And there is no in between. There is no neutrality. So either the government exists under the authority of God, or God does not exist. Duh. There is no third choice. Noting that Scripture itself calls rulers gods, Calvin, emphasizing the importance of the civil government, said, quote, "What is this except that God has entrusted to them the business of serving him in their office, and as Moses and Jehoshaphat said to the judges whom they appointed in every city of Judah, of exercising judgment not for man, but for God." And he was quoting Deuteronomy 1:16-17 and 2 Chronicles 19:6. This is at page 1489 of his Institutes of the Christian Religion, which I recommend. there's only about another 100 pages of it after 1489. I think it's 1585, something like that. But it's a short read. Light reading matter, you know. Tom Clancy, for instance. It's equivalent to that. Using Paul's epistle to the Romans, Calvin said that rulers are ordained by God for rewarding the good and punishing evildoers. The Apostle Paul said in Romans, at chapter 13, verses 3b and 4, then do what is good, and you will receive his approval, the magistrate. For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. Now, of course, the sword is for spanking people, right? Not exactly. And the Bible never taught cutting off people's hands or legs or anything like that. No, the sword was to cut your head off. Okay? Not just prick you a little bit, cut your head off. For he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Close quotations. Furthermore, Calvin urged Christians to be willing to serve as magistrates. But whether Christians or not, he believed magistrates should be faithful as God's deputies, both in their private and in their public lives. He said, quote, to sum up, if they remember that they are vicars of God, and a vicar is someone who stands in place of God, they should watch with all care, for a limited purpose that is, earnestness and diligence to represent in themselves to men some image of divine providence, protection, goodness, benevolence, and justice. This is at page 1491 of his Institutes. As a point of specific application to contemporary America, we note that Calvin emphasized that the office of magistrate ought properly to have a concern for both tables of the law. What? That is, magistrates should not only be concerned with the behavior of man toward man, but also with the behavior of man toward God. How can this be? All right, we'll get to that in a moment. He said, it is fitting that they should labor to protect and assert the honor of him, God, whose representatives they are, and whose grace they govern. Moreover, he spoke of the folly of those who would neglect the concern for God and would give attention only to rendering justice among men, as if God appointed rulers in his name to decide earthly controversies, but overlooked what was of far greater importance, that he himself should be purely worshipped according to the prescription of the law. This is at page 1502. This means most obviously that civil governments are required to encourage the proper worship of God. They don't set out the worship form, okay? They don't tell you which church to go to, but they do encourage the proper worship of God. The proper worshipful attitude toward God, and to discourage impiety toward him. For Calvin, civil government should support, encourage, and protect the practice of Christianity, together with suppressing and punishing all other religious practices. Oh, what about freedom of religion? We'll get to that. Moreover, blasphemy and idolatry should be regarded as public offenses and should be punished accordingly by the civil government. Blasphemy and idolatry? Well, surely government shouldn't punish blasphemy, huh? And idolatry? Really? Really? How can that be? How can that be just and right? I'm shocked. Wait a minute. Let's think. Just a moment. Just a moment. Does our current civil government, or our culture for that matter, punish blasphemy? Well, I can't think of any. Or can I? Well, what is political correctness? Have you thought about that? What is political correctness? It is the culture, remember, which is downstream of religion. There's a religion, and it has a view about the ultimate questions that bind us together. And its view is expressed in these speech codes. Go on a campus and find out whether you can say things against homosexuals. Well, but is that a religious view? Well, of course it's a religious view. All right? Remember now, religion is what we call those ties that bind us together regarding the ultimate questions of life. What is real? What is good? What is wrong? False? What is evil? Okay? Well, aren't they telling us that homosexuality is good and failure to approve homosexuality is hateful and evil? Don't they tell us that? Don't they tell us we should love homosexuals? Okay? And that when we don't, we're haters. That's a speech code. That's blasphemy laws. That's what that is. Right? Blasphemy laws are unavoidable. Every government has sacred words, sacred beliefs, violation of which orally will be punished. Try to get on the internet and use the N-word in a pejorative sense. Okay? Do it. See how long you stay on the internet. That's one of the blasphemies that you're not allowed to say. I'm not saying that we should say that word. I'm just pointing out that blasphemy is a real concept that exists whether you're a Christian or not. Everyone believes in laws of blasphemy. Everyone does. It's all around you. Why should not God also insist, since he's God, that certain things ought not to be said? Certain attitudes ought not to be held. Well, isn't that what we're told now, that certain attitudes shouldn't be held? You shouldn't have unloving attitudes toward homosexuals. You shouldn't have unloving attitudes toward people whose skin is differently colored than yours. Well, those are, in fact, evidences of their blasphemy laws, their views on blasphemy. Can't get around it. By the way, just as an aside, we're told that hating is bad and loving is good. But you have to understand, hate and love are transitive verbs. They, by themselves, carry no meaning. They are carriers of meaning, but they themselves, without a direct object, don't carry any meaning. If I tell you, I love, is that a good thing? I hate, is that a bad thing? Well, how about, I hate people who kill babies in the womb. Is that a good thing? Now you got to decide, huh? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I love people who kill babies in the womb. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it depends on the direct object, huh? The people who kill babies in the womb, not the transitive verb. How about, I love God? Is that a good thing? Well, not if you're a God hater, it isn't. How about, I hate God? Is that a good thing? Once again, it depends on your view about God and whether you should hate him or not. Okay? There's no such thing as neutral transitive verbs. I mean, anything but neutral transitive verbs. They are neutral. The meaning is provided by the subject and the direct object. Okay? So bear that in mind. When they call us haters, I hate evil. I do. I hate evil. I'm supposed to hate evil. I love God, and I hate evil. I'm supposed to hate evil. I love good. I hate the idea of killing babies. I hate people who kill babies. Now, does that mean I go out and kill them? No. It means I pray for them. and I make the argument in favor of the babies against those who would murder them. But loving and hating all by themselves don't mean anything unless there's a direct object supplied. Right? Anyway, getting back to the blasphemy, this undoubtedly sounds shocking to modern ears. The degree of shock the hearer experiences indicates how well cooked he is in secular cultural soup. What do I mean? Well, those who have been educated in secular universities were taught the theories of political philosophers on the origin of government as an institution. The uniform tone of the popular political theory is that men, for purposes of defense and good order, came together to form governments. That's not true. That's not true. It assumes a naturalistic explanation for the existence of governments without reference to God. It is a philosophical assumption smuggled in as history. However, it is neither history nor is it true. God ordained civil government, not men. Now let's talk about freedom of religion. I've been promising you we were going to talk about it. Additionally, the implicit assumption that freedom of religion ought to be extended to every religion, isn't that what you assume? What could be fairer, right? Open the door. Let every religion flourish. Really? Really? Think about that. It's patently absurd and unworkable. Satan worship is undoubtedly a religion. It is. It has what it regards as answers to those ultimate questions, and the answers that it has bind all Satanists together. It is then a religion. But it's a religion that in some cases at least demands human sacrifice. Oh, we should let that pass. That's okay. Huh? Listen, many of the native religions in America also demanded human sacrifice. Should we allow them to be practiced freely? Should we? All right? And if not, where is the line to be drawn and by what standard? The government's going to determine which religions are legitimate or not legitimate? Really? And how long do you think it's going to be before they decide that Christianity is not legitimate? Huh? Remember now, if your government is controlled by God-hating progressives, the seed of the serpent, they will hate you, they will hate Christianity, they will seek to destroy Christianity and to at least destroy your beliefs, if not to destroy you together with those beliefs. If they can get you to verbally assent to their view of things, whatever private reservations you may hold in your own heart, they're content with that. But they're not content with letting you practice your Christianity in the world. They're not. They're going to fight against that. They'll do everything they can, and they use unfair, immoral methods all the time. There are myriad offensive and morally objectionable practices by false religions of every stripe. Which of them are to be permitted? And how are conflicts between religions to be resolved? By what laws? Islamists insist on Sharia law as a fundamental principle in following their religion. Should we bow to Sharia law? If not, why not? Should all religions, including Christianity, be subject to secular laws? If so, you understand the First Amendment is truly a dead letter, and Christianity is dead as well. A little reflection reveals that culture is the outward expression of commonly held and deeply cherished values and beliefs of a people. It's religion. When codified, those beliefs and values comprise the law order system to which the culture commits its fidelity. a way to visualize this, as we've been saying, is to see codified laws of a body politic as downstream from culture, and culture as downstream from religion. We've got religion, we've got culture, we've got the body politic. Okay? We think the laws come out of the body politic because it's the political representatives who issue the laws, but those laws come from the culture. And of course, the cultural beliefs about law come from their religion. Right? Do you understand that? You have to see the whole picture. Now, if you have two cultures living side by side, trying to form one body politic out of two separate streams of religious thought, what is that going to look like? Or if you have 5 cultures, major identifiable cultures with 5 major identifiable religious traditions, different beliefs about the nature of reality and the answers to the ultimate questions of life, living side by side, trying to produce one body politic, what is that going to look like? Let me guess. Anarchy, confusion, chaos. How about conflict also? How about bloody, violent conflict? That's what it'll produce. And in the end, it can only be held together by force. And then it will disintegrate, it will fragment. It cannot sustain itself. That is an impossible idea. This melting pot idea, where we have all these disparate cultures coming together, forming a single culture, is simply nonsense. There has been a dominant culture, and when other cultures come over here, they adapt themselves to the dominant culture. Of course, they will shape and influence the dominant culture somewhat as well. That's true, okay? But they don't create an entirely new culture. Besides which, all of these cultural groupings, when they came here, they shared fundamental Christian beliefs. Not all, but most fundamental Christian beliefs were shared. Therefore, they could form, under a large umbrella, a single religion with many different denominational peculiarities. That's true. But out of which they could produce a single body politic. But you can't have a single body politic out of Islam, Hinduism. Look, Islam and Hinduism tried to coexist in India. Do you know what the result of that was? Pakistan. That's what the result of that was. Pakistan broke off as an Islamic state from India because it had a different religion, therefore a different culture, therefore it required a different body politic. This is not rocket surgery, as my son-in-law would say. I'm going way long, I know. But this is a really, really interesting topic for me, and it should be for you too. You need to rethink your fundamental ideas about religious freedom, and about is there neutrality, and about what is the function of government, and what is the function of the state, and how are they supposed to relate to one another? How are they supposed to relate to God? Are they supposed to relate? Is only one supposed to relate to God? Is the other really neutral? Can there be neutrality? Ask yourself all these questions. Imagine the scenario as it works itself out in this real world. Look around you and see what is going on right now and why. Okay? And listen to the things I say and examine them carefully. Look at what God has to say about these things. Examine what I'm telling you to see whether it rings true or not. If I'm lying about something, then, or I'm wrong, then put that in an email. Send it to me. All right? Calvinist Runner, all lowercase, no spacing, at gmail.com. CalvinistRunner@gmail.com. Let me know what you think. Let me know where you think I'm amiss. I've run off the rails somewhere. I certainly can do that. All right. When I say something, obviously I've thought about it and I believe it's right. Is it always right? Well, my history clearly tells me no. I've said things that turned out to be very, very wrong, and I could be doing that as well now. I know that. And so iron sharpens iron. I need your iron to sharpen my iron. If I'm missing something or I'm overstressing one thing and understressing another, let me know. All right? I want to honor God and His truth. But I want to tell you as clearly as I can by God's word what's happening in the world, because you need to be armed. We're reaching a point of decision as a culture. Which way are we going to go? We really are. And right now, it's like trying to hold the lid on a pot of boiling water. Okay? That's what's going on. That's what you have to understand. And you have to make a stand. You will make a stand. All right? The question is, will you make a passive stand, okay? Closing your eyes and your ears, seeing no evil, speaking no evil, hearing no evil, and allowing evil to inundate you in the flood that is to come? Or will you be one of the voices fighting for the truth? In the end, I know who wins. It's going to be the seed of the woman. They will crush the head of the seed of the serpent. I know that. But when will the end come? Is it 10,000, 40,000 more years? We're still in the infancy of the church. And you are given a marvelous opportunity to shape the future of the world through shaping the future now. Shaping the present now will help to shape the future of the world. And you can be a voice for God on earth, helping to change the world. This is a wonderful time to exist. Oh, woe is me, woe is me. Look how tough it is. Well, listen, it's in tough times that you can have the greatest impact. That's when a voice of sanity crying in the wilderness will be heard. Right? Because people can't live in insanity forever. Anyway, enough for today. God bless you. Bill, do you have anything you'd like to add? We will not be here tomorrow, but we'll see you on Monday morning, 7 o'clock. Hope you're there, and I look forward to talking to you. This is all very, very interesting stuff and very important to our lives. Very important. Can't overstate that. If you have children, grandchildren, you need to be thinking about these things. If you bury your head in the sand like an ostrich, there will be large parts of your anatomy that remain targets. If you know what I mean. God bless you, and remember, there's worse things than dying, and the very, very worst of all is being unfaithful to God. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend.